Are we live? We are live. What's up, wrestling fans? How's it going? How's it been? Happy New Year, everybody. This is the Two Bros Wrestling Show. I'm Doug. That's Kevin. And here we are back again, another year. Kevin, how was
Another
New
year.
Year's?
We had a. It's been good. Everything's been good. I will say I have missed the show, but that's what the holidays are for: is to take that break, come back recharged. And Doug, it's not just the first show of the year. If you're watching at home, it's the first time watching the Two Bros Wrestling Show. First, where have you been? It's
right?
Okay.
Come on.
It isn't just any normal show. We don't have our normal format tonight because Doug, I don't know if you can believe it or not, but this is the fourth edition of the Two Bros Wrestling Awards show, where we look at the best of the prior year.
And once again, I'm hopelessly underdressed as always. You, my friend, are looking spectacular in your tuxedo tee.
And we have the red carpet here behind me. So, because we're handing out some awards tonight, Doug. We're talking about the best of 2023. And before we get into the awards, we're going to do a little year in review. We're going to look at the biggest stories of the year, and then we're going to hand out some trophies to some worthy folks, male, female performers, tag teams, announcers, match of the year. We have it all coming up. But before we get into that, Doug, we obviously every year is going to have its share of big stories. 2023, though, had some particularly big events occurring. What do you say? Let's dive into some of those.
Let's dive into some of those. And, full disclosure, as we go through this is the part where I thought we were getting runners up, because I have a runners up here for this, for like my pick. But yeah, okay. Yeah.
Got three stories here. I got three that I'm counting down. 3, 2, 1.
I've got three.
You got three? Okay, good. What your third biggest story of the year? Let's start there.
See, and here's so third biggest story of the year, because I'm looking at these, and these are so hard to pick because we had so many big wacky things happen this year. So I'm just going to go in order here, where we have, I don't even know actually where to start here. I guess I have to take them in chronological order for them to make sense, though, because I think the third biggest would be Vince McMahon's return to WWE in 2023. Yeah, where I mean, it's kind of, he retires, basically retires in disgrace in July of 22, and
never happened.
It never happened. It was just like a wrestling angle. It's like he was just off TV for a while. And then Vince came back at the beginning of 2023 with a vengeance, with the whole idea of he's coming back to sell the company. We didn't think that would happen, but I'm sure we'll cover whether it did or didn't. If you've been under a wrestling rock for the last year and don't know what's going on, we're about to fill you in about that. But that's my number 3, looking at them, because there's a lot of big wacky things that happen, and this is just one of them on a list that we could probably do an entire show of big wacky wrestling things that happened in 2023.
So for me, what I have at number 3, I know obviously every year we are going to lose luminaries in the world of professional wrestling. 2023 was no different. We lost legends like Iron Sheik. We lost legends like Terry Funk. That is always to be expected. What always shakes the wrestling community is when it's the untimely deaths, when they're too young. They're not of the age of Funk and Sheik. And that's why I have it at number 3, because we didn't have one of those untimely deaths this year. We had several. Mm-hmm. And sadly, very early in 2023, we lost the great Jay Briscoe by a tragic car accident. And then just a few short months after that, Bray Wyatt, whom folks were waiting to return to wrestling after an undisclosed illness had him absent. And now we know, obviously, that there were some COVID-related heart problems and things that ended up causing him to sadly perish before his time. So I have those two untimely deaths as my third most prominent story of 2023.
And it's unfortunate we have to talk about it, but I think, we're going to hit with wrestling, like you say, we're going to lose wrestlers every year as the days go by, as the years go by. I don't want to say it's expected, but like your Iron Sheiks, sure. This was a guy who was a legend in the 80s. Eventually that time was going to come. But when we're looking at your Briscoes and your Wyatts, not that any of these wrestling deaths are any easier, but those two, and that's not a thumbs up for a wrestling death. That's not cool. That is not
very
cool
inappropriate, Doug.
Very inappropriate. Well, and again, I don't know how that does that. But
we're having a little fun, obviously, but no, it's a loss. Both those men still had a lot to give to the profession,
absolutely,
much less to their families.
And even a wrestling related death is a little bit easier to swallow, I think, than a car wreck when you're taking your daughters to cheer practice, or a COVID related comorbidity or illness. But
it's sad to say that in wrestling, when we have the untimely death at a young age, we've become a bit desensitized to it because we think it's going to be drug related. Unfortunately, pain pills and the drugs that mask a lot of the other effects of the wrestling industry tend to be what take wrestlers young, be it steroids or pain pills. And these are two young men who lost their lives in a very unusual circumstances, not the way we're used to losing folks too soon. So still, obviously, we'll always remember Jay and Bray, but gosh, what all more they could have done.
Right.
Such good. Jay Briscoe was one of the best workers you'll ever see. Bray Wyatt had one of the best wrestling minds for character work of anybody you'll ever see. We lost two, not just young men. We lost two great young performers.
Absolutely. So
Doug, how about number two?
That was a little heavier.
Bring it up.
That was a little heavier than I planned on going this early or at all in the show, really. This is an award show, man. I got a dance routine coming up in a little while.
Stay tuned for that.
Me and Neil Patrick Harris, we got a whole thing worked out later. But I'm gonna. My first one leads into my second one. It's not time for the dance routine yet.
No.
Again with the thumbs up.
You better make it a positive one, Doug, because you got a thumbs up to start it with.
Well, the WWE's actual sale, Vince McMahon actually did what he came back to the company, what he said he came back to do, which I imagine he decided very, very far into his retirement that if he couldn't have the company, he wasn't going to let anybody have it, and he would just come back and sell a thing. And that's basically what he did, because he came in under pretense that, he controlled the company. He had all the controlling shares. If it was going to be sold, he was going to come back and oversee that sale. And as it turns out, that's exactly what Vince did. He came back in and WWE was sold and merged with, not merged, but is part of the same corporation, same network, if you will, that owns the UFC. So you've got a combat sports conglomerate now in
TKO.
TKO. Yep.
My number two story, Doug, I have a feeling we're going to swap stories here. Number two story of the year for me this year, CM Punk and everything surrounding CM Punk.
Okay. Yeah.
So for me, the runner-up story of the year is Punk goes and gets himself fired from AEW, and then Punk goes and gets himself hired by WWE, both in really bizarre and spectacular fashion in both instances. After the year he had in 2022, you didn't think there was anything he could do to get himself fired, and then he did. And then you thought, the man's untouchable. There's no way we will ever see CM Punk in professional wrestling again.
We'll see Tessa Blanchard before we'll see CM Punk on a major network.
Nope. And CM Punk back. So CM Punk dominated. I know as far as airtime goes, there is no wrestler we talked more about this year than CM Punk. We have several. Go check out the archives if you haven't, if you're not a regular viewer. We have multiple shows on the CM Punk story, as did the rest of the wrestling world. He definitely ate our news time up over 2023.
If we weren't talking about Vince McMahon, it seems like we were talking about CM Punk. And yeah, I think those stories do go chronologically again, because yes, you've got your runner up, CM Punk actually getting fired with cause from AEW after, getting into it with, Jack Perry at Wembley over a spot or some word.
And let's not forget, Tony Khan, the
right.
actual boss of AEW, feared for his life.
Yep. Tony Khan feared for his life. And anyway, Punk gets fired. And like you say, we're talking, no, it can't happen. As long as, we've said it before, as long as Vince McMahon was in charge of WWE, we would not see a CM Punk back. Vince wasn't in charge, but I really didn't think, how is Punk affectionately referred to him in the past, that doofus son-in-law of his? This is the man in charge, and this man does not hold a grudge like his father-in-law.
He does not, obviously.
And he knows what's best for business. And really, people do change. And, honestly, I think maybe the more I've thought about this and had time to digest it, I still think Punk is a toxic personality. But I think Triple H and the people at WWE, the people in charge, have more experience and more of a mindset and more of a skill set to handle a personality like that and keep it managed and in check and make everybody a lot of money along the way.
No arguments for me on that one. But we might have some arguments over what the top story is, since I think we're flipping and flopping here. What is your top story of the year, Doug?
Oh, like I was saying, those go back and forth because again, I think, Punk is the runner up to that, but Punk actually showing back up in the WWE, which I still did not think was a possibility in any realm, because again, the man is clearly toxic, but I think somebody sees dollar signs. And I think there's a better skill set with Triple H and the people he has in charge there. I mean, Shawn Michaels probably knows a thing or two about difficult individuals to work with and deal with. So I think there's a bigger skill set to deal with a personality like Punk in the WWE than Tony Khan has. I don't think Tony Khan has that within the company. Triple H has got it in multiple places and has dealt with it, throughout careers, where really AEW has been maybe 5 years now? Is it 5 years old?
4
years. 4 years. Yeah, because they announced it in 2019, right? So, but that was mine. Punk actually returning to a WWE ring, returning to WWE, and really, kudos to Triple H for the way he pulled it off, because we're all going, there's no way this does not happen. This does not happen. It's not happening at Survivor Series. Look, okay, it's over. Match is over. Baby faces win. Music's playing. The logo goes up in the corner. All rights reserved. Cult of Personality hits. Chicago explodes. And here we're still talking about CM Punk.
And we are talking about CM Punk going into 2024, when we thought that we probably had talked about him for the last time in 2023. We're going to have way more to say, I'm sure, on the Two Bros Wrestling Show throughout the year on CM Punk. Depending on his behavior. We'll see. Number one.
I was going to say, we might even have more to say about him tonight.
We might. Foreshadowing. Stories of the year for me takes the cake in my mind. The top story of not just this year, you could say this is the biggest story in wrestling of the last several decades, and that is the sale of WWE and all that surrounds it. That includes the return of Vince McMahon, the sidelining of Vince McMahon, the ceremonial role now that Vince McMahon apparently portrays, the assurgence of Triple H when folks thought that perhaps he was going to then be on his way out. Instead, he has been bolstered by the new regime as being firmly the man in charge of creative. We've seen Kevin Dunn, executive producer, chief of global television, leave WWE as of January 1st, in fact, as a result of the sale of WWE. Kevin Dunn has been the lieutenant right-hand man, yes man, you might say, for Vince for decades. He has shaped pretty much everything you have seen on WWE television over the last several generations of wrestling fans, and he's gone. The sale of WWE changes everything about the modern pro wrestling landscape. We're going to have, I think, in 2024, foreshadowing what we'll be talking about when we do this show next year. I know that the main stories of the year in there is going to be the broadcast landscape of professional wrestling, as everyone is jockeying for streaming rights, as everyone's jockeying for their placement on network or cable television. Mm-hmm. All of that has changed because of WWE becoming much larger than it already was, dominating the pro wrestling industry. They will dominate the discussion of professional wrestling in 2024 and beyond now, thanks to the backing of TKO and Endeavor. Yes. It's not a family business anymore. I mean, yes, he's still there, but it really isn't. It's the first time in any of our lives that the pro wrestling industry is not ran primarily by a McMahon.
This is true because, I really hadn't thought about it, but you're right. It's not a family business anymore because Stephanie's out, Shane's out, Vince is out, Triple H is there, but Triple H is, the only Levesque, Helmsley, McMahon, whatever that there is there.
Oh, Helmsley, Levesque, McMahon, whatever. I like that character.
that was an era in the early 2000s, wasn't it?
But Doug, that is a lot of stories for 2023.
That's a lot of stories, and
that's just the top.
Right.
I mean, there's so much more we could talk about from the crazy year in wrestling that was 2023. It was a very transformative year in wrestling. And to that end, Doug, we have some awards to give out for folks who really did transcend professional wrestling. And before we get into actually handing out those trophies, though, I'd like for us to take a look back. Let's look at our choices from last year. This is the categories that Doug and I picked last year. As you can see, for 2022, we were in lockstep on a couple of these. And some of these haven't aged as well as others, but for the most part, I think we had some good choices here. I think for the most part, I think we can stand behind these and feel fairly proud of them.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
But will we have any repeats? That is a question.
Oh.
Will anyone repeat this year? Doug, let's start with best announcer. Going runner-up and then announcer of the year.
So let me tell you, let me go first here with my runner-up, because my runner-up was my announcer of the year last year, because Michael Cole, and I didn't realize I had Michael Cole as I probably should go back and do a little bit more research for our shows. But
I got you covered.
You sure do. You sure do. I'm more the color man. You're the guy with the the holds. I just sit and ramble. So, but you're the Excalibur to my Ted DiBiase, maybe.
Okay, $1 Million Man. Who's your runner-up?
Michael Cole, right? Because
Michael Cole.
When Michael Cole was let off the chain, when Vince split in 2022, Michael Cole really elevated himself and was really, it was just so much more of a cleaner product, a better product without, Vince in his ear all the time. Vince comes back. I don't think Vince was necessarily in the ear, but I think Cole got a little squished down again. But, once Vince was gone again, he comes back up and just blossoms. And, there's times where I watch and I'm like, you know what? Cole's actually a pretty cool dude. He's good. He's very good at what he does. And he's actually a pretty cool dude.
Did you ever think you'd hear yourself say that about Michael Cole?
No, I did not.
And Michael, it's funny because Michael Cole and like Tony Schiavone were two guys that at one point I did not like. Because again, I'm thinking Tony at the end of WCW days and how disinterested he was, or Michael Cole produced by McMahon yelling in his ear, and not being JR, which was not his fault.
Right.
But I mean, you take the chains and guardrails away from both those guys, I love them both now. I mean, yeah,
I
Michael
know.
Cole's very good at what he does. Tony Schiavone cracks me up.
Shivani,
But yeah,
and Shivani also seems like a really cool dude. You know, I want
that's
to
right,
hang out with
man,
Cole.
brother.
I'm gonna hang out with Cole and Shivani. That's what my bold prediction of 2024. I'm hanging out with Cole and Shivani. The three of us are having drinks.
I want to be a fly on the wall for that. My runner-up of the year is someone who does have dinner with Michael Cole. My runner-up for announcer of the year is Wade Barrett.
Oh, okay.
I have really enjoyed the role of Wade Barrett as color commentator. Wade Barrett had a solid mid-card career. Most folks, if you know Wade Barrett and remember Wade Barrett, probably best remembered for his time leading the Nexus, or the time as Bad News Barrett, which produced a catchphrase that folks tended to like. But I think he's really found his calling as a smug heel commentator. Not everyone does the heel commentator anymore. Back in the day, you had the face commentator, and then you had Bobby the Brain or someone there who was like, I'm sorry, my monitor went out. I didn't see the cheat. And I do think Nigel McGuinness is doing a really good job at that. Sometimes, though, the guys that are even heel, they go back and forth. They don't stay solid heel on the mic. Wade Barrett's pretty much a solid heel on the mic, and has a great voice for it too. So good work this year by Wade Barrett, my runner-up.
Absolutely good work by Wade Barrett. Absolutely.
How about your announcer of the year?
It's interesting that you talk about, the heel announcer this year, Kevin, because, my person for my awards, it's a man who does not care to call anybody a clam digger, a man you just called out. I think he was in TNA. He was Desmond Wolfe. I've loved this man for quite a while, with his Tower of London finisher in TNA back in the day. Unfortunately, what was it, a concussion that really took him out of full-time competition, but he was great on NXT UK. He's been great on Collision. I'm so glad that Mr. Nigel McGuinness is part of AEW and is All Elite, because he is my selection for the announcer of the year this year. I mean, because like you said, there's not a lot of people who do the heel announcer. And I think Nigel's doing a hell of a job being a heel announcer. Loving it.
It's hilarious that we both realized that this is something that has been missing in the world of pro wrestling. Someone who just stays on that bad side of the line. And I can't argue with Nigel McGuinness. I'm going a little different route, and maybe an unconventional route. It's one of those if you know kind of things. But winner for me this year, Vic Joseph. If you watch NXT, and I don't have to tell you the work that Vic Joseph's doing. If you haven't been watching NXT, you might wonder, who's Vic Joseph exactly? Vic Joseph is probably the best announcer WWE has under its employee right now. And this isn't any offense to Kevin Patrick on SmackDown, but I don't know why Vic Joseph hasn't got that chair yet. He is excellent on the stick. He is excellent despite the fact that he has to work with the worst announcer in all of wrestling, and that is Booker T on color commentary, spouting cliches and nonsense. But Vic Joseph has managed to keep the high quality level up despite Booker T, despite his wife being let go this year by WWE from her backstage role. With all of this, he has maintained, he's held the ship, and NXT really had a resurgent year this year. The ratings are up. Their performers are getting promoted to the main brands at a higher clip than ever before, and actually succeeding on the main brand, which wasn't always the case with NXT in the past. I think a lot of NXT's resurgence, you can't overlook the voice of the product, and Vic Joseph has been the voice of the product, and NXT is must-see wrestling again, and Vic Joseph has had a lot to do with that.
That is cool. I like that call. The unconventional? I don't think so. I think it's a good call.
I think I wouldn't be a bit surprised, Doug, if in a year's time we do see Vic Joseph getting the call up himself to one of the main brands.
I would like to see that, I think. Yeah.
And with that, Doug, let's hand out some more awards. This time, let's talk breakout performer. This isn't, by the way, folks, to level set, not necessarily a rookie, sometimes a rookie. Sometimes it could just be that year where a performer who's maybe even been around a while ups their game, goes to the next level. They have their breakout. That's what breakout performer of the year is, Doug. I don't care if you want to go first. I go first, either one. Runner up.
Well, I tell you, I struggled with a runner-up for this one, because there's a lot of good wrestling out there, but I wanted somebody who really there's only one person I can think of who has had an amazing year in my mind anyway, and it's not CM Punk, but but who's really had an amazing year and then pushed the envelope with with two classic matches, one mind-boggling how just insane it was. And I really can't think of anybody other than this one person. So I'm going to I'm going to pass on a runner-up, and I'm just going to go straight for the gold once you get your runner-up.
I'll give you my runner-up then. I am going with timeless Toni Storm. Toni Storm was a phenom on the indies. She was amazing in NXT UK. She did not really have the run in NXT as one might imagine, nor did she really have the run that she had really no run at all when she got called up to the main roster. She was just used in WWE, misused, I would say, and then, of course, unsummarily dismissed. Her AEW tenure probably was had a better start than her WWE time in WWE, but it still wasn't to the level of the talent that timeless Toni Storm was.
Right.
I guess, though, that was before she was timeless. Once she sunk her teeth into this timeless character, she has taken her game from a high level where the fans who really, follow women's wrestling knew what was in there and were, pushing for her to get that push. She sunk her teeth into a character. She ran with this character. She is entertaining anytime she's on the screen. Right. She really did break out this year. And now we're seeing exactly what WWE missed out on. Not just a great performer and the in-ring, but a performer all the way around. Timeless Toni Storm.
Absolutely. I do not disagree with that at all. Toni Storm. We may say her name again later in this list.
we may,
some more foreshadowing there. But for me, man, there is just one person who stood out this year, which I think he's been a standout for a long time. I think it's taken other people a while to get on board. Go, oh yeah, I know you've been you've been in this house for a while, Kevin. You know whose house I'm talking about. There is no other person I can think of than a breakout than Swerve this year. Finally, they're giving the man the push that Swerve deserved when he was in WWE. Tony Khan, there's a lot we can say negative about AEW at this point, but at least Tony Khan's getting this right. He's got the push on Swerve. Swerve had an amazing year. His battles with Hangman over the past year, now that does get a thumbs up, But yeah, Swerve for me, man. It's a double thumbs up even.
I mean, I will be honest with you. I had a hard time. I almost had Swerve as my runner-up. He is actually not my breakout performer of the year because so much of his comeuppance was in the latter half of the year, but I struggled to not put him on here. I think that 2024 is going to be a huge year for Swerve Strickland, so I can't argue with you on the fact that he has definitely broken out. But for me, I don't know that there's a success story as far as breaking out that I've seen quite like the one of L.A. Knight.
That's fair.
We go from a horrible male model gimmick to a manager to, he's so old, they say, Vince says that we don't even want him in the ring. You're going to manage these models. Next thing you know, he's fired. And then he not only comes back, But now he's back. The fans want him. He's main eventing. He's teaming with John Cena. You talk about someone who's turned his career around completely. LA Knight, when he was Eli Drake, was a big star in TNA. He was a big star on the Indies. He was a big star everywhere, and then comes to WWE, and as so many do, they hit that ceiling. Usually once you've hit that ceiling and you're of a certain age and you've got dismissed, as we've seen this year with so many folks that have been brought back but still didn't catch fire. We had a whole show on that, like, the folks that we were excited to see come back who still weren't doing what we had thought or had hoped they'd be doing. You can't say that for LA Knight. If there is one person who grabbed the brass ring that was hanging above him, he made it. You could not deny LA Knight this year. Even if they had wanted to, they could not deny LA Knight this year. And he's at the top of the card. And I think that it's not a one and done year for him. I think that there are still big things ahead for him in 2024. There's some marketable moments yet for LA Knight to accomplish.
Absolutely. I just I did a quick Google on him because I was curious how old he actually is. Man's only 41. And we talk about people too old to be in the ring. What's Flair, like 98 or something like that now?
That's too old to be in the ring. No matter what Ric Flair will tell you, that's too old to be in the ring. But yeah, 41 is not old in the professional wrestling business when it's not, it's about the performance. It's not about the competition. And LA Knight certainly doesn't seem like there's anyone he can't keep up with. As we just saw, if you watch SmackDown this past Friday night and saw that main event, he can hang with the best.
Yep.
He was in with two of the best and hung with them. So yeah, definitely breakout performer for me, LA Knight.
Cool.
Now let's go and talk about another kind of performer, not those that broke out, but those that managed to come back when they haven't been around for a while and make an impression in the world of wrestling. I don't know if you've got yourself a runner-up or not.
I do here. There are honestly a couple of categories I really struggled with. There's on down through here, but for comeback, I've got the runner-up and I've got the main prize here. But for comeback, as much as I don't want to keep talking about this man throughout the night, throughout the year, we just can't help it. It's either Vince McMahon or CM Punk. This one's got to be CM Punk, because look at this. Not only did he have one comeback, because we had the brawl out at All Out in 2022 that took him out of the company, where we thought, well, he's not coming back. He's injured. He's hurt. There's no way Tony Khan's going to let him back in once he's healed. Guess who gets their own show? Not just comes back, but gets their own show. It's CM Punk. Then, but wait, there's more. We go to Wembley, where it's already been established after he got his own show, Punk doesn't play nice with others because there are certain people he won't let on his show. He gets in a fight with one of the kids, one of the young talent, over reasons about a spot. The kid's trying to get heat, or so he said. And we still haven't seen this kid back, but Punk gets fired. By the end of the year, not even at the end of the year, Punk gets rehired by a place he hasn't been in 10 years. And everybody was certain he was never going back to this place. Punk twice, 2 comebacks, 1 year. Unbelievable. This man, as toxic as he is burning up lives like a cat. It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. For certain. For me, the runner-up for my comeback is definitely a little less controversial than a Punk. And I guess maybe at one time it wouldn't be, not for his behavior, just for how divisive he was in the world of pro wrestling. But folks used to hate John Cena. Unless you were of a certain age, you probably were chanting Cena sucks when someone else chanted let's go Cena. John was always divisive, and yet this year he came back, and this wasn't one of those small runs where someone comes back for a WrestleMania payday or something along those lines, which there's nothing wrong with. We all love seeing some legends return. No foreshadowing there. But John Cena didn't come back to wrestle a big match. John Cena came back because the actor strike was going on. John Cena came back and gave back. He gave that rub to an LA Knight who I was just talking about. He teamed with LA Knight. He spent most of the time that he was back on his back, putting other guys over, not coming back going over everybody like Superman. He really was giving and generous with young talent, which is exactly what you want your legends and your superstars to do. There is no better, again, love him or hate him. You want to talk about the opposite of a CM Punk. There is no better company man out there than John Cena. If you want someone to trust with your brand or trust to do what it is you want him to do, John Cena, I have never heard of backstage disagreements or creative differences. The man just follows the game plan. He is a soldier, and he was really impressive to me in his, what was it, 6-7 months. He didn't just, it wasn't a cup of coffee. He had a run, and it was quite a good comeback, I thought.
That's a very good point, because he went above and beyond. So what he did for Solo Sikoa comes to mind, just putting that kid over so much.
Look where Solo is now.
Right. Yeah. It's a good call. Yeah. Absolutely.
Doug, how about your number one comeback of the year?
So this one's a little tough. The Briscoe family had an incredibly rough year from the start. The Briscoes, Mark and Jay, are known as a tag team. They've had solo success, independently in the past, but the Briscoes are, a tag team. Now Mark doesn't have Jay, and Mark has to be a solo performer, and to continue on like he did. And really, it seems like he did not miss a beat. And I know that is in tribute to and for his brother, not because the man's not hurting, not because the man's not uncomfortable in doing what he's doing without his brother. But, for me, I can't think of a better spot for this man than to say, this is a comeback, because he wasn't down and out, unless you count the situation that happened to him as down and out. It's not a wrestling thing. It's not like he had an injury or he was, the fans didn't like him or creative had really bad plans for him and he worked his way out of a hole. He worked his way out of a family tragedy and kept going. And I gotta give it to Mark Briscoe for the comeback.
I have no idea how he wrestled that tribute match. What was it? Not even a week,
right? With Jay Lethal, man.
Yeah. Not even a week after his brother passed away, and he's out there in the ring somehow remembering spots and putting on a great performance.
Right.
That's a good call. Definitely a more positive person than my comeback. My comeback is your runner-up. What more can I say that we haven't already said on this? Is that CM Punk was dead to the wrestling world. And then he rose again and came out smelling like roses somehow in all of this. Of course, time will tell.
Time will tell.
History will judge whether or not it stays that way. But for now, devil his due. CM Punk, for anything I've said bad about you in 2023, I meant it. But still. Kudos to you, sir. Look at you now, right?
Absolutely. And just a side note, unless you have it, you may not have seen it already, but CM Punk's not the devil.
What?
Just saying, that didn't work out with Punk.
that would have truly made him would have really tipped my cap to him then if he'd made that comeback. Still, the fact he's on my screen at all, CM Punk, kudos to you. Comeback of the year for sure.
Yep.
In my mind. This is not my favorite category, Doug, just because every year we have to sit here and go, why?
And I don't know about you, but this is the one category where I had an embarrassment of riches of people to choose from. Some things, because when I think a lot of these categories, for me, it should still be fresh in my mind, over a year later. What can I think of about this person or this one or that one? Do I need to go back? Do I need to restore? If I can't if I can't recall it at this point, which I'm getting older, and and I blame a lot of it on having COVID brain still to this day, but if I can't recall it immediately, or when we're sitting around talking about wrestling, it probably wasn't that great in my mind. Either that, or maybe I just forgot about it, which I guess is all possible. However, with these people, there are just so many, unfortunately, that I can say this person, this person, this
And
person,
I
this
don't know
person.
about you, but I in distant years past, maybe not last year, but go 2, 3. This is our fourth time doing this annual award show. It used to be a given that WWE was going to be misusing a bunch of guys,
Right.
and or gals.
Mm-hmm.
Now I will say it's both companies that I now can look at and go up and down the roster of what are you doing with her? What are you doing with him? What are you doing with them tag teams that are languishing? There is just, and it's not the whole, well, Vince McMahon's out of touch. Right. It's all, all the good stuff's happening on AEW. Now there's good and bad all the way around.
All the way around.
Unfortunately,
absolutely
underused performers is really all the way around, especially with so many free agents sitting out there, still hoping to catch on with somebody else. Too much talent on the sidelines. Doug, who is your runner-up for most underused or misused performer?
You know what? I was torn between Keith Lee and Miro for this, right? And
those were our two choices last year. So nothing's changed.
Exactly. And now look at that, and that's just for runner up, because between Keith Lee and Miro, I'm like, what is going on with these guys? Either one of these could be either one of these guys you could pick. I'm gonna go. Since I did Keith or Miro last year, I'm gonna just go ahead and say, Keith Lee, my runner up this year, because
Keith Lee's my runner up too. That's who I have as well.
I don't know what I don't know what's going on with Keith. I think he's been good to wrestle. I think there have been some issues with him physically, but from what I'm reading from
an injury for a while, which unfortunately kept him out of the last pay-per-view for AEW. He didn't get that match.
He did get pulled from the match with Swerve, but he was wrestling a little bit before that. And I don't know, maybe if there's a legitimate injury that I'm not aware of or something like that, my bad. But, I feel like I should have seen him on my TV a lot more than I have.
Yeah, it's been an injury that's been lingering for a while, but even before that, if you just look at the way it's booked, it's not this one booking that he missed at this last pay-per-view that has him as my runner-up for most misused and or underused. It's been several years worth of, it's been since NXT where I sit and scratch my head going, do you not understand what you have in the Keith Lee? What is wrong with the major promotions that they can't get Keith Lee right? The closest that it's happened was in NXT or was in AEW when he and Swerve were a tag team. They both should have been propelled out of that tag team to bigger things. One of those men has, and one of those men has settled back, unfortunately, into where he has spent the last several years. And whether it's his body now letting him down or bookers and writers over the last several years letting him down, we have not seen the Keith Lee that we thought we would see when you look back 5 years ago and projected out where we would be right today talking about Keith Lee in 2024.
Absolutely. With it,
yeah, it's frustrating, especially when you're saying it for the second year in a row. Obviously last year we were talking about him as well. Doug, how about your most misused or underused? Because I've got a little different one here.
So my most misused is kind of Miro adjacent, actually. if we're looking at AEW, and you already know where I'm going where I say he's Miro adjacent. Since Miro's wife was for a brief period of time his manager. Maybe he'll go back to WWE now, and Selena Vega can pick him up. We put him in the LWO and just keep right on trucking, and do something good with him now, because Triple H can know what to do with him. And he and CM Punk can hang out and talk about how bad AEW is. But Andrade, amazing talent, wasted except on Saturday nights occasionally, where we get these great matches near the end of the year with you name it. You know, he's one of those guys I realized, just like Daniel Bryan, you put me in the ring with him, we're going to get like a
Yeah.
5-star match. You know,
Yeah.
it's just going to
Exactly.
happen.
I mean, you're married to Charlotte Flair. I mean, what does it take to? What kind of connections do you need to take catch a break in this business? It. I will say that I, concur with you on Andrade as being one of the most misused or underused talents. And I will say, just like a Keith Lee, you have to go back to the Triple H ran days of NXT for
Yes.
Andrade to have been booked well. This is the second company now, when you talk main roster WWE and now AEW, where he's flamed out in a way that makes zero sense when you look at the talent that he brings to the table. How you can miss the boat on Andrade. Hopefully now unencumbered by Vince McMahon, maybe a return to WWE, he'll have different fortunes this time, because Triple H and or Shawn Michaels at NXT both are right now operating at a ridiculously high level on the creative side, and surely they will know what to do with an Andrade.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
But my winner for most underused or misused performer of the year, and hear me out.
Okay.
How can you have an all elite wrestling and misuse the elite? The Young Bucks.
No,
the Young Bucks are my misused or underused performer of the year. I know that may be strange to some who still consider them, if not the best tag team, among the best tag teams in the world. They're definitely one of the most over teams when they're out there. But what did the Young Bucks do exactly this year? Yes, they had the match with FTR at the Wembley Stadium. That match was great. It's two historic teams and rivals blowing off in a big setting, but it was almost overshadowed by FTR's extracurricular activities of the weeks leading into that. They weren't anywhere really near the main event tag team scene. They weren't near the tag team belts. They play just side roles in a company that bears their name. It just felt, and I will say, in the last couple of weeks, we saw Matt Jackson's wife step away from her behind the scenes role at AEW, supposedly partly due to the fact that she did not feel the company came to the support and aid of the Young Bucks after the whole CM Punk fiasco. So I don't know. I know obviously they re-up their contracts. They signed for a lot of money. They're going to retire happy, wealthy men. Kudos. Good job for them. They deserve it. They've put their bodies through it. But on the creative side of things, other than collecting their paycheck and having a big moment at Wembley Stadium, I remember, some 6 and 8 man tags and some flippy floppy action that amounted to no real stories that comes out of this year. No tag title chases or pushes or reigns. Just was a weird year for me for what is inarguably one of the most talented tag teams in the history of professional wrestling, and kind of a wasted opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. I think there's probably potential for an entire show of what happened to where did the elite and all elite go? I mean, because you think about it.
Make a note here.
Yeah. Yeah. Kenny Omega sidelined. Cody Rhodes gone. The Young Bucks, just
around,
and Hangman starting another fight with Swerve to start this year off. Not that I'm complaining at all, but I think the elite are best when they are a group, absolutely. And it was
an odd year. It was just really odd year for how the centerpiece of your company was booked. So that's why I had them as most misused. But moving to the positive side of the tag team world and teams that were not misused, teams that had themselves fine years on the tag team side. Doug, who do you have for your runner-up?
Well, Kevin, it's somebody that everybody loves because, Everybody loves the Acclaimed, and the Acclaimed had such a great year. They're such a great gimmick. They're such a fun bunch to watch, and their tag team title run was so short lived, though. Yeah, but for me, the Acclaimed had a really good year. A really good year. Not good enough to be the top call for me, but I think the Acclaim had a good year, a good fun year. And they don't have to have those 5-star, 7-star matches for Meltzer to, hit this list, but they're fun guys. I've enjoyed them a lot this year. So and there's my random thumbs up for the Acclaim.
Everybody loves the Acclaim, Doug. You're right. I love the Acclaim. They did have a fine year. For me, though, my runner-up tag team of the year is a team that does have those 7-star matches. And arguably, to me, they are probably the best overall tag team in the world, but we're just looking at the year that they had. I'm going with my tag team of the year last year. For my runner-up this year, still, I think probably the best overall team on the planet, but that is FTR. They had another fine year, despite some personal mishaps, despite some injuries. There were some things that kept them, for me, just out of the top spot, but you just can't keep this team down because of how talented they are. Everybody has to recognize that FTR are going to go down as one of the all-time greats, and they had a good year, not the top year for me, like they did last year when they dominated every continent's top tag team titles last year. But this year, good solid year, FTR.
And I think that's what really kept them out of my top two, because spoiler, they're not my number one. But if you compare FTR's 22 to their 23, it's so far apart. Like you say, I think it's good to say that they had a good year, not a great. They didn't have an FTR year. They really did not have an FTR year, but maybe they were still recovering from their 22. Honestly, I mean,
the dog collar match they might have been still wearing.
Yes, exactly.
Who's your tag team of 2023, Doug?
So. Again, I'm bringing the fun to the tag teams this year, because I love a good stable and I love a good tag team, and I love it when a tag team is in a stable. I don't think we really got that with anybody I mean, I guess there are tag teams that are in stables, but nobody really pulled that off quite right this year for me. But I love the Odd Couple, and there we go. I've already got my thumbs up. I must talk with thumbs and it just triggers something. But anyway, oh yeah, there it is. MJF and Adam Cole. What a hilariously awesome team, because again, it has to be fun, it has to have a story, and you have to have, and these guys can work too. I mean, it's not like just three. Okay, it is two random guys that were thrown together, but it's much better than the current AEW tag team, even though they were ROH tag team champs. So much story there, so much fun, so much just ridiculousness to push these guys through a tag team. So I prefer my tag teams to dress the same, come out to the same music, and they didn't do any of that, even though we had this amalgamation of music eventually, and then they did start dressing alike with the Burberry Bebe stuff. But I mean, it went from, oh God, what are they doing, to, oh my God, this is great, with the two of them. So for me,
I went with a team that also isn't a traditional, we dress alike, we, are a tag team in most people's minds. But for me, tag team of the year, I'm going with KO and Sammy.
Oh, yeah.
They only had a 6-7 month run as a tag team this time around, but that was not only a majority of the year, that was some of the best tag team wrestling we had all year. And it played off the real life friendship that everyone knows. Mm-hmm. These two, you might not say they're the Young Bucks or FTR, but they have a history where they've been a historic team together. They've been historic opponents against one another. They have been connected for so long in real life that to see them team felt natural. It also was hilarious when it needed to be. It was aggressive when it needed to be.
Yes.
It propelled the both of them to the top of the card at WrestleMania. Don't forget the only satisfactory bloodline payoff for fans at WrestleMania was the night one main event, because everyone was so into Sammy, and it was Sammy and KO main eventing WrestleMania against the Usos and winning there. That was the only WrestleMania weekend story where the fans left the Bloodline storyline happy. And that's because of Sammy and KO.
I was pretty happy with the night 2 Bloodline ending too. I was good with both of them.
I'm talking about the typical fan, not the jaded Cody hating fan. No, KO and
absolutely.
And then once they were done with the Bloodline, what did they do? They went and had a very entertaining feud with Judgment Day, and put Judgment Day over as took them from a middle card faction to honestly the predominant faction now in WWE. And I know that Sammy and KO have gone their separate ways now, but being moved to different shows. But the history is so strong there. At some point they'll come back together again. Their 2023 run, though, when you do the highlights of KO and Sami Zayn, there will be many that will be shown from 2023.
Yeah.
Doug, we're to some of the top prizes now. Let's talk female performer of the year. There's a lot of good choices here, so you can't go wrong in your runner-up. I had a tough time.
I have a tough time with this one, too. I chewed on this for a really long time because, there's talent from AEW that's had really, really great runs this year. There's WWE talent that, and talent that's come back to WWE at the end of the year. And there's just so much, but I really have to go with Nia Jax and her return. No, I'm kidding. I am kidding.
Sorry. I'm surprised that when you come back, your female performer, you're coming back.
But this was tough. I've got one gal from the WWE though, and one gal from AEW. I'm going to go with my WWE gal first, and let's just talk about the year that Mommy has had. Every time Rhea Ripley steps in the ring, my goodness, it is gold. It really, really is gold, even when she's just outside the ring. And, I don't know if you've seen a lot of this, but just like the interaction, like these like fan videos that you'll see on like Instagram Reels and on X, formerly Twitter X, whatever we call it now. We see all these like fan videos from the audience where she's interacting with the girl's always in character, like around ringside, but it's still this playful character. And it's just like, Mommy's had a great year. I can't really say anything bad about Rhea Ripley. So she's just inched out this other performer from AEW. Was inched out by her. Just barely, though.
So you want to talk about inched out? I had a hard time to not put Timeless Toni Storm in one of my top 2 because I think she has had that great a year. But just because of some certain circumstances here I'll get into, for me, my runner-up is Jade Cargill. When I'm thinking of who had a great year on the female side, you go one company dominating the first half of the year, going undefeated, and then you dominate the conversation when you go to the other company without even wrestling a single match yet. Who has that kind of year where you can go from undefeated and the golden child in one company to the talk of all of wrestling without ever wrestling a single match in the other company? I still think the best is ahead for Jade Cargill because we got to see that in-ring work, the match, the WWE style, and I think it'll get there. But as far as someone who had themselves a great year on 2 female rosters, including one that she's interacted with without actually having physical altercation. Right. Jade Cargill is well positioned right now for a big 2024.
Yeah, Cargill definitely has the look. She has the charisma. She has the presence. She gained and proved to me that she can learn and can have the skills in the ring. There's nothing but good things coming for this girl. And I really can't wait to see her, lock up with a Rhea Ripley. We're not going to see, hopefully we'll see Jade's debut before Charlotte gets back from her injury, because that sounds like a nasty, nasty injury that's going to take her out for quite a while. Was it 9 months we're talking now, I think? But hopefully we see Cargill in a WWE ring before that time. But good things for her. Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
your overall top female performer?
Well, dude, you mentioned
2021?
Timeless, and let me say, I got you. I
I
got
mean,
you
yeah,
because
good.
I my brother-in-law was in over the holidays and had been away from the AEW product for a while, and it's more of a periphery with him, and so I was having to educate him on Timeless Tony Storm and explain why she is in black and white in interviews, and he had the question, which I think it makes perfect sense for the casual wrestling viewer to ask this question, because I've said that all of Tony Storm's screen time should be in black and white. He's like, does she wrestle in black and white? I'm like, no, but she should. But just this character that she just ran with, it's
Yeah.
pure nonsense, but it's pure gold.
Yeah, it's nonsense, but absolutely Luther carrying her around. And I mean, watch for the shoe. I mean, every bit of it, just
Yes.
absolutely hilarious. Yeah, I think you're right. Let's go black and white. And while we're at it, let's go, let's change that aspect ratio too. Let's have letterboxes on the sides. Right?
Yes, that would be great.
Let's go full out. No doubt, Timeless Tony Storm had a heck of a year. For me, my female performer of the year is your runner-up. Mommy is always on top. She is on top of my list. Rhea Ripley dominated WWE. She dominated not just the women's division, mind you. This is a woman who was trusted to open a show. She was trusted to close a show. She was trusted to be the alpha in a faction, which to my recollection has never happened in my fandom of wrestling fandom. I don't recall the women ever being anything other than the eye candy or the valet, or just on hanging on one of the guys' arms there. And this lady hangs on no one's arm. Dom is the one who is dominated in this relationship. The other Judgment Day members are definitely they are under Rhea Ripley. She was everything this year. I don't know where WWE and their women's division would have been without her. She's had one of the strongest runs at the top of the female card of any female performer in recent history. I'd say you might have to go back to Becky Lynch and the Man days to find a female performer that was put over this strongly.
Yeah, I can't argue with mommy. Can't do it.
You better not.
Nope.
Doug, male performer of the year. I've been letting you go first. I'm going to go runner up first.
All right. What you got? What you got?
For me, this is going to be an interesting category, and when I'll get to my end and my main one, I'll say the main reason why, for someone who maybe I thought might appear in one of these spots but didn't. I'm going to go runner up. I'm giving it to Gunther. Gunther has done more for the Intercontinental Championship than anybody since that championship's heyday in the 80s and 90s. I love the fact that he is now the longest serving Intercontinental Champion of all time, beating out the Honky Tonk Man. That needed to happen, but no one has held a title, the Intercontinental title, as long as Gunther has held the Intercontinental title. He has been dominant. He has had great matches with everyone from The Miz, as you've seen here recently, to Sheamus, to a couple of outright classics with Chad Gable. Anybody Gunther can have a good match with, and he had numerous of those matches this year. And I love the fact that they have held back on doing a title switch, and that is just going to mean that much more. It's going to be like the world title situation that WWE has. I never thought I would see such restraint from WWE on the title scene, but I do love the way that they have minted these champions as long-term champions, especially on the heel side, because that's where the money is in that chase. Somebody's going to be made a made man when they finally take Gunther out.
Absolutely. Good choice.
Doug, you're runner up.
So my runner-up is a man I mentioned earlier. We're going back to Swerve's house, Kevin, because Swerve has had a great year. He's, I think, proven what WWE lost. The loss of WWE, because out of that faction, I forgot the faction's name now. Oh my God! But that he was in WWE, that he was, the man in it, and I think that's been proven time and time again. But now that he even comes over and shows them, hey, you should probably do something more with me and Keith. He shows them time and time again. It's just Swerve's house. I think it's going to be Swerve's year. I think he had a great 23, just not enough for me to look at him and go, that man is performer of the year. That man rose above this year. I mean, he rose to the top, but he did not rise above like my number one.
So I think it's interesting to hear your runner up, because now that, even though, for those who haven't watched our previous award shows, Doug and I do not let each other know in advance what our choices are. But I have a feeling if that is his number two, I have a feeling who his number one might be. And I think it's interesting because someone that has not been out of my top two in some time is this year. It's been at least 3 years since I haven't had Roman Reigns listed as one or two. Roman had, obviously, he's still your universal heavyweight champion. Therefore, 3 years, 4 years running, whatever it is now, I mean, there's no more dominant title reign than his. I do think, though, that the Bloodline storyline lost steam after WrestleMania. I think that his well-deserved time off, I'm not, not marking the man off, giving him demerits for taking much needed time, but it did keep him a little more out of the conversation. There would be a whole month or so that he wouldn't appear, pay-per-views he wouldn't be at. So because of that, it's the first time in the most recent couple of years where I haven't had Roman Reigns at the top or second to the top, because this year for me was all about Maxwell Jacob Freeman. MJF had a heck of a year. We always knew the man was great on the microphone, one of the best young mic workers in the business, a heel through and through. One of those that was going to be money down the line. They'd say the one knock on him, they would say, is that no one remembers anything he does in the ring. And then what did he do this year? He goes out and he has a series of great matches with everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, from Hangman to Samoa Joe to Adam Cole to Kenny Omega. I mean, for those who thought he was just a talker and not a wrestler, he proved all those doubters wrong. He silenced everyone. For those who thought he was so despicable as a heel that all he could ever be was a heel, no one would ever cheer him as a face. I give you not just my male performer of the year, but my scumbag, MJF. Top.
I cannot disagree with your sentiments about your scumbag, because he's also my scumbag. Absolutely.
The first thing we agreed on. This is the first category we agree. I had a feeling that this might be the one, because how can you say anyone else had a better year than MJF?
Marcus, nobody did have a better year than MJF. I mean, MJF shows how he has elevated his game to such an amazing level. Like you say, can he work babyface? Can he work heel? Yes, he can work babyface. He can work heel. He can work tweener. He is our scumbag, whether he is a babyface, whether he is a heel, whether he is fighting on one leg or with two good legs. It does not matter. MJF,
the Adam Cole stuff you mentioned earlier. I mean, he was hilarious. He could be
cold,
despicable.
It really was.
Or when the bell rang, he could do it there too. I mean, it was just an all around, and he was rewarded. He's now the longest reigning AEW champion in their young history. And this will be remembered as the year of MJF, the year he really took it to the next level.
Absolutely. And you talk about, just going back to talk about Cena, how, Cena is the company man, MJF, you don't think of as that company man, but he went out of his way to represent AEW in so many outside things over the past years as champion, and really step up and do those champion things and do them in a very MJF fashion. I mean, he's your scumbag. He's my scumbag. He's our scumbag, Kevin. MJF.
And the first agreement, Doug, male performer of the year. Let's take it to match of the year. This is what everyone likes to talk about. That's why I always save it for last, is what the best match of the year was. A lot of good candidates on this list. I'm going as a runner-up. I'm going for one, like, man, some people said that, this was over the line. Did they go over the line? You could argue it. Did they definitely at least go to the line? Sure. Is it something we're still talking about? Yep. Is it something that we'll be talking about for generations? Absolutely. It's not my favorite style of wrestling. It's better in small doses. But everyone's talking about it because what they put out there was heart and soul and hard hitting and memorable and passionate. Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page, Texas Death Match at Full Gear is one I won't soon forget, even if I don't want to. I'm not sure I like that Hangman comes back and immediately goes and gets in Swerve's face. Like, I don't think, that was such a definitive ending moment. Let's not try to one up it or bring it back. That was a perfect way to end a blood feud. Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page, runner up for me.
Man, I said it earlier that some of these don't have like runners up. This is one that particularly doesn't for me. And it's something, like I said, I gauge this by what comes to mind immediately when we start talking about performer of the year, match of the year, what shoots out there without me having to like go back and review, right? There's really only one that did this. It's burnt into my brain, Good, Bad, Ugly, because I am not the hugest fan of this style either. I don't want to see men get their faces stapled with staple guns or whacked with cinder blocks or hung.
Vampires drinking another man's blood.
I don't want to see that, but I saw it and I was like, this is. There was a point where I had seen people talking about this being a match of the year, if not the match of the year, at least a contender. It's like, I don't know. I don't think so. But it has to be my match of the year, though, because it is the only match where I can just stop and not have to go back and review anything. And maybe that's my old man brain. Maybe that's, whatever it is. But that is the one you say, hey, Doug, what's the one match that comes to mind of the past year? It is that Texas Death Match. Nothing even gets a runner up. It blows everything out of the water as far as I'm concerned, because
Doug has no runner up.
None, no runner up, because that is your runner up is my match of the year, because Good, Bad, Ugly, and I think it was all those things. It was disturbing. It was uncomfortable. But it's burned into my brain. Was I entertained? Strangely so. Did it disturb me that I was so entertained by it? Yeah. It made me wonder what's wrong with me. And I'm pretty sure everybody who watched it, who liked it, at some point they're like, why am I so into this? Well, first of all, it's because both those performers are telling such an amazing story, such a disturbing story, and such really, with the build up to it, a story that could not have ended any other way, especially when some of our other death matches in AEW have ended, with a fizzle instead of a bang. But no bang here, but there was a hanging of the Hangman. So
I can't argue with a match that finished in my top two. It's absolutely a classic that'll stand the test of time. So I can understand anybody who would put it as their match of the year. For me, my match of the year happened early on in 2023. Yes, they had a US match on AEW's Forbidden Door. It was a classic, but their earlier match in New Japan was superior, and that is Kenny Omega, Will Ospreay, Wrestle Kingdom 17 in the first couple of days of 2023. My goodness, I think it got the old 7-star or whatever for Meltzer, and it earns every. I don't know how you make a scale go beyond the 5 stars, but however many stars you give this match, it earns it and more. I get that part of it. It was a classic. And obviously it's something that maybe down the road when Kenny gets we can see on maybe a more long-standing US based feud between these two. But go check out Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay from Wrestle Kingdom a year ago. It shows that every year it's a trend where a lot of times some of the best matches of the year takes place within those first 3 or 4 days because of Wrestle Kingdom. We just had some great matches this past week from Wrestle Kingdom.
Yes, we did.
But
And
anyway,
I'm sure I'll forget about those by next year when we do the show too, because absolutely there's one that my old man brain just forgot about. And Wrestle Kingdom is so, I mean, it is like right on the cusp of 23 of on the previous year. It kind of blurs those lines, and you're like, was that at the end? Is the beginning?
it
But
does.
yeah,
Yeah. It's how they kick off their year. And sometimes it's the best match of the year at the very beginning.
Right.
But they did. They had a classic for sure. Doug, that is our awards. We have handed all the trophies out. The only thing left to do, as we do every year, is we put on our soothsayer hats and peer into the future of 2024. And it's opening days. We're 7 days in at the time of this taping, Doug. Can you see 2024 well enough to give us a bold prediction for this upcoming year?
Bold prediction, Kevin. Some may say this is not so bold, but I think this is the year a lot of people expect this to happen. I'm predicting it doesn't happen. And by the end of 2024, December 12th, no, December 31st.
You got it down to the date. What's happening December 12th? Tell me.
Well, we'll talk about that out there. But December 31st of 2024, we will hear, and still going into 2025, Roman Reigns, our tribal chief, will continue his unprecedented reign as this universal, undisputed God King of Wrestling Championship, whatever the belt's called now. He will not lose those belts this year. Not to Rock, not to Cody, not to anybody. He will push forward because that's, I think, what is expected this year. So it's not happening.
Okay. Well, that might be one we'll have to explore in a full show at some point in time, especially if we're going the direction it seems we're going with the Rock making a return, maybe sidelighting the Cody story. So that probably is something that would be good to talk about where we think it's going from here. Doug obviously thinks it's not going anywhere but around the tribal chief's waist still. So I like that as a choice.
There's still new Samoans to bring into the bloodline. There's plenty of Fatus out there in the world we could bring in.
So my bold prediction may not be all that bold either, because it's something that some folks were thinking is going to happen. But Warner Brothers Discovery is going to abandon Tony Khan.
Oh yeah.
Warner Brothers Discovery is a business. And therefore, I wouldn't count on any loyalty to Tony Khan and AEW. I know Tony Khan likes to talk about the relationship he has and the great partnership that they've had. And then I know he has high hopes that was going to translate into a huge contract, ROH spot, a streaming service deal, like the whole 9 yards. But now we're hearing pretty persistent rumors that Monday Night Raw may end up on Warner Brothers Discovery, one of their stations. Yep. I'm predicting that this occurs because they are a business. Why wouldn't they want to be, if they have a choice, in league with the number one promotion instead of the number two promotion? And whether you think one is superior to the other is beside the point. On paper and in terms of dollars, there is one leader and there's one way in second place. If they can do business with the number one dog in the business, they will give Endeavor that contract, and that's going to leave Tony Khan in an unusual position. He's going to have to look elsewhere, and I predict that when he does, I'm not going to predict where he lands. There's just way too many options there, but wherever it will be, it's going to be a lesser opportunity and station than Warner Brothers Discovery offers with TBS, TNT, HBO Max as possible streaming home. All of that, it's going to go away for Tony if Monday Night Raw signs with that. With Warner Brothers, that's going to leave him scrambling for a second tier cable station, less money than he'd hoped, and probably having to keep going the Bleacher Report pay-per-view route. It probably is also going to mean that ROH will have to fold. I think that was my prediction last year, that he would keep the talent and work them into the main roster programs and just dissolve ROH. He, to his credit, has kept it going as a separate entity. But if that Warner Brothers Discovery contract goes WWE's way and they don't re-up with Tony, I'm thinking he's going to have no choice but to fold ROH and find a home for AEW, on I don't know, what was it that TNA ended up on back in the day, like Sports America, or I mean, like
Right.
I hate to see him scrambling the way that Impact scrambles, or the way like New Japan has to scramble, or
Ruckus.
we're getting the
Move,
tail.
girl.
We're getting the tail. But yeah, that's my
Thank you,
bold
Liam.
prediction. It
You
might
got
not
it?
be that bold, considering that there's a very
Thank
good
you.
chance that the Raw situation plays out just as I said
Thank you.
right there that it would. And if it does, then yeah, I think that that's bad news. Tony Khan's had a bit of a rough year in the way the blooms come off the rose a bit. There's way more criticism than there's been before, way more defections,
Yeah.
way more pay cuts he's had to make by letting people go, letting people walk. I think that he's going to have to tighten his belt a little bit. I think things are going to get a little bumpy for Tony. He's not going out of business. I'm not saying that it's the end, but I'm thinking that his living large days as being the spunky underdog, the reality hits this year, and that contract's going to hit him hard, and there's going to be tough ramifications that are going to come out of that.
I don't see your prediction as that bold. I think
Yeah.
it may be fair, unfortunately accurate. You know, it's
I think it will. I think it's going to happen.
yeah, it's not a wacky prediction like mine, but I think it's could very well
I don't think
be
yours is
in the
wacky.
future.
I wouldn't be surprised if Roman Reigns is still their champion. I know a lot of folks watching us probably don't like hearing that, but both
yeah.
of the things we just predicted are definitely they're bold in terms of like they're big news if we're talking about this in 2025. But might they both happen? Absolutely. These are both on the table for possibilities for 2024. To the chagrin of a lot of folks that will not make a lot of wrestling fans happy, I know.
Yeah.
But Doug, hopefully we've made a lot of wrestling fans happy.
Hopefully so. You know, it's our first night back, and I think we needed to let the affiliates know we're running long because
it's one of our longer shows. It usually is, because when we wrap up an entire year in one episode, there's so much to talk about. We hope that you have enjoyed it, and whether you've agreed with us or not, please let us know. If you're watching this on demand, leave it in the comments. Definitely subscribe, give us a like, what have you. You see our upcoming schedule. If you just tuned in because you love best ofs, you wanted to have a recap, you wanted to see what these two old marks were picking as their match of the year, whatever reason for tuning in, we appreciate you doing so. On our regular show, we hit our weekly news up front. We have a main event topic that we hit every week. That's a deep dive. And then we give we give little rewards every single week. We give you your match of the week you should watch, the performer of the week. So we would love it if you would come back. You see our schedule scrolling there. Doug, we have a lot of Royal Rumble that we're talking about throughout the month of January. But it is Rumble season, and we will kick that off, Doug, next week when we start talking about the greatest Rumble moments of all time.
Excellent. Can't wait for it.
All right. Hopefully you join us. We'll see you next week, fans. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, everybody. Go watch some wrestling.
Happy New Year!